The winter wind bit through the streets of New York like a blade, howling between buildings, scattering newspapers, and chasing warmth from every corner. Inside Tony's diner, the flickering neon sign buzzed softly against the foggy window panes. It was nearly midnight, and most of the booths stood empty, except for a lone couple quietly sipping coffee in the corner. Daniel Carter, a waiter in his early 30s, tightened his thin jacket around his shoulders as he wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that night. His feet throbbed beneath the worn soles of his shoes, and he hadn't had a full meal in almost 2 days. Still, his face held a tired, gentle smile, the kind that hinted at quiet strength and stubborn hope. For 3 years, Daniel had worked at Tony's, scraping together what he could. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, and even less when he added his mother's mounting hospital bills. She'd been fighting for her life for months now, and he was fighting to keep her there, alive, with a chance. The world hadn't been kind to Daniel lately, but that didn't stop him from being kind to the world. That night, just as he was about to lock up, the door creaked open. A blast of cold air swept in, followed by a woman who looked like the storm itself had chewed her up. Her gray shawl was frayed, clinging to her as if it were the only barrier between her and the brutal night. Her shoes were soaked, her hands trembling. She paused in the doorway, eyes darting across the diner as if unsure whether she had the right to be inside. Daniel glanced up and froze, not out of fear or suspicion, but out of instinct. There was something about her eyes, pain, exhaustion, and something deeper, a kind of quiet, desperate dignity. "Ma'am," he said, stepping toward her. "Can I get you something warm to drink?" She hesitated. I don't have any money," she whispered, voice barely audible over the soft hum of the kitchen. Daniel didn't flinch. "That's okay," he said gently. "A cup of coffee's on me." She blinked at him, clearly surprised. He offered her a kind smile before disappearing behind the counter. Moments later, he returned with a steaming cup of coffee. And not just that. He added a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and a small bowl of soup. "You should eat," he said, placing it all in front of her. "It's cold out there." Her hands trembled as she lifted the cup to her lips. "You don't have to do this," she murmured, eyes shining. "I know," Daniel said simply, "but you look like you could use it." She took a long sip of the coffee and then slowly began to eat. Daniel returned to wiping tables, pretending not to notice how she savored each bite, as if it had been days since she'd last eaten anything hot. "What's your name?" she asked quietly when she finished. "Daniel," he replied. "You have a good heart, Daniel." He chuckled softly. "I try. It's not always easy." She tilted her head. "Why are you working so late?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "My mom's in the hospital. Medical bills keep piling up, and I work double shifts just to stay afloat. But hey," he shrugged, "we all have our battles, right?" The woman nodded slowly. "Do you have a place to stay?" he asked. She looked down. "Not really, but I'll manage." Daniel hesitated. Then, without thinking, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the only $20 bill he had left. It was supposed to get him through the rest of the week. Food, maybe some subway fare, but he pressed it into her palm. "Here," he said. "It's not much, but maybe you can get a warm place to sleep tonight." Her eyes widened. "Daniel, you need this more than I do." "I'll be okay," he said with a soft smile. "You need it more right now?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "You have no idea what this means to me." The woman stood, nodded with quiet gratitude, and walked back out into the night. Daniel didn't even ask her name. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the diner bleary-eyed and exhausted. The night had been long, and the cold even longer. He had barely made it through the doors when a sleek black car pulled up outside. A chauffeur stepped out, walked around, and opened the back door. Daniel's eyes widened. Out stepped the same woman from last night, but she looked completely transformed. Gone was the tattered shawl. Instead, she wore a tailored winter coat. Her hair was neatly styled, her makeup subtle but polished. She carried herself like someone who had never known the cold, graceful, poised, confident. Daniel froze in place, dish towel in hand. "Good morning, Daniel," she said warmly. He stared, speechless. What's going on?" "My name is Eleanor Carter," she said, "CEO of Carter Enterprises." His heart stopped. Carter Enterprises was one of the largest corporations in the country. Multi-billion-dollar ventures, philanthropic foundations, and more influence than most governments. "I don't understand," he managed to say. "Last night," she began, "was a test." Daniel blinked. "A test?" "I do this from time to time," she explained. "I disguise myself, go out into the world without name or wealth, and I see how people treat someone they think has nothing. I was looking for kindness." Daniel just stared. "And you, Daniel," she smiled. "You passed, with more heart than I ever expected. You gave me food, when you had barely enough for yourself. You gave me money when you desperately needed it. That kind of compassion. She paused. It's rare. It's powerful. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This, she said, handing it to him, is for you. He opened it slowly. Inside was a check for $100,000. His hands trembled. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Eleanor said. And you must. Use it for your mother, for yourself. And if you ever want a job, there's a place for you at Carter Enterprises. Daniel felt a wave of emotion rise in his chest. He turned away slightly, trying to hide the tears that now blurred his vision. Thank you, he whispered. She touched his arm gently. Thank you, Daniel, for reminding me that there is still good in the world. That night, Daniel went straight to the hospital. He paid off every cent of his mother's medical debt. He held her hand as he told her they were going to be okay. Weeks passed. Daniel moved them into a new apartment, safe, warm, and close to the hospital. His mother began to recover, slowly but surely. And Daniel? He accepted Eleanor's offer. He started at Carter Enterprises not as a symbol of charity, but as a man of integrity, someone who had proven what no resume ever could. But every week, without fail, Daniel returned to Tony's diner, not to work, but to serve, sometimes with food, sometimes just with conversation, because he never forgot what it felt like to be on the other side of that counter. He knew now, more than ever, that kindness doesn't need to be grand to be powerful. Sometimes it's a cup of coffee, a warm plate of food, a $20 bill offered with no strings attached. And sometimes the world notices. In a city that never sleeps, where millions pass by each other without a glance, one man's kindness changed everything.